Welcome back to Talk+Water, the podcast for Texas+Water, a publication of the Texas Water Journal, the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment, and the Texas Water Resources Institute at Texas A&M. And today, on our fifth podcast, our guest is Darren Thompson, who is the Director of Water Resources for the San Antonio Water System. Welcome, Darren.
Thank you for having me, Todd.
Well, you and I have known each other for a while, but why don't you tell the folks who are listening a little bit about your career and tell us as much as you want or as little as you want.
Okay. Well, for the water side of my career, I've been at SAW a little over 22 years. I started out as an intern in grad school, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do at the time. But I thought water sounded interesting, and I had a little bit of background in government, and studied government in college. Took a little bit of geology, a little bit of geography. So I thought, it kind of fits. So got the internship, worked SAWS as an intern. I liked it. It was very interesting, the type of work that I was involved in, and got on full time after I got my master's degree, and I kind of bounced around a little bit in a couple different departments, but worked my way back to water resources, and now 20 years after I got back into water resources, I'm now the director. So it's been a fun journey, coming in as a wide-eyed, not knowing a whole lot about water, and now actually overseeing the water resource department for the seventh largest city in the country. So it's pretty cool.
That is interesting. I didn't realize that you started out there as an intern, and it's almost kind of like these old movies you used to see where like somebody starts out in the mailroom and then they end up
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I kind of again, while I was prior to the water side of things, I worked for 3.5 years with Bexar County as a juvenile detention officer while I was going to grad school.
Wow.
So it worked real good for my while I was going to grad school, but it's a place that'll test your patience and make you work hard to go elsewhere.
and probably very good preparation for being part of the water community, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of like stepping into a public meeting, and people are against what you're proposing. So,
boy, there's a lot of that too in water. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me, since you've been at SAWS for 22 years, how have you seen the organization change over that time? Because it's it seems to me, I've been working with SAWS in some capacity or another, I guess you could say, going back to 1994, and so I'd be curious on your take on how the organization's evolved.
So going back to 96 when I started originally as the intern and then moving into full time, so I started beginning in 96, and it was a very different organization at the time. To me, I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back and comparing that to what I see in other utilities across the state and the country, it was your traditional water utility. Again, you're focused on selling water and treating wastewater. And on the water side, which I was involved in, we had one source of water. It was unregulated, so there wasn't a huge impetus to do something different because you had an unlimited supply of water. So
right,
you didn't have to go out and hunt for water like you do nowadays. But that's that changed dramatically over the years. I think now we're much more innovative and aggressively seeking new ways to save water and to maximize other sources that we have. So it's very, very different.
And not only did you have just tremendously abundant supply of water. I mean, the quality was so good. You didn't have to do the kind of treatment that
absolutely,
folks who are taking surface water had to do.
Absolutely. I mean, you watch TV and you read the articles nowadays, and you see water quality issues across the country and across the world where boil water notices for cities that are without water. I mean, just like Austin.
Yep, I lived through that.
I mean, that is not a good situation. And here in San Antonio, when it was just the Edwards, there was no treatment needed. I mean, there still isn't. But it was much simpler.
Right.
It wasn't as complicated as taking surface water from whatever source it is and making it safe for your customers to drink.
And that's what I found fascinating about how SAWS has changed, because what you're talking about there is a massive disincentive, really, to do something different, because it's so much of it there and it's so cheap and it's of such great quality. That's a real kind of difficult thing to get the public to understand how well we have to do things differently now.
Well, and you go back to the 80s and other opportunities that the city had back then to acquire new water sources and supplies. Because of the situation we have with the Edwards, they never acted on any of those because they were too expensive.
Right.
Canyon Lake was one of those. We had an opportunity to purchase a majority of the yield of Canyon Lake.
Right.
But because of the Edwards, it was free, it was unlimited, so why spend the money?
Right. Yeah, that's a great story, because when the organization was there before SAWS and the Guadalupe Blanco River Authority, went to court, and it went to the state Supreme Court about who was going to build Canyon and have rights to it, and the G-Ray won, but then years later, offered to sell that water to SAWS, and if I remember, the contract gave SAWS kind of an option to get almost all of it eventually. It's very interesting because New Braunfels and San Marcos, of course, use the largest amounts of water from Canyon, but New Braunfels didn't actually support the construction of Canyon way back when. I mean, it's a great story.
Yeah, it's the history of San Antonio's water is very, very intriguing. There's a lot of really neat facts that, over the decades, but I think the last 20 years and what we've done, I mean, we've light years from where we were before. I mean, it's been a fun and fascinating journey going from that one source of water to now having 8 sources with 15 different projects.
Wow. And
integrating those different sources of water, into the distribution system without our customers being able, or without them telling the difference between the sources. It's like, we want, if you're on the west side of San Antonio, east side, north side, south side, it's all the same water to them. Right.
And so you look at how SAWS has changed over that time, and what I've always been impressed with is how after losing Sierra Club versus Babbitt, the Edwards Aquifer Endangered Species Act case that led to these changes, at least in my opinion. SAWS, really embraced the conservation ethic and has become a leader in that area, nationally, and has done so. Like you said, all the projects, you didn't name all of them, but the diversity of them is really something.
And you go back to the lawsuit. Unfortunately, I was not here at that time. Came in a few years later, but the articles and the comments from back in the early '90s. Obviously, San Antonio was not very excited about the result of that lawsuit because it forced us to change. But coming in '96, my first real job at SAWS was helping put our permit application together to submit to the EAA.
Oh, wow.
So, that's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
I got to see that transition from that original source to now where we are today. But, I do believe, and I'll credit our former COO, Steve Klaus. He's said this a few times. But, going from that unregulated source to being regulated and not having the volume of permits we need to meet our city's demand at that point, it forced us to take a look at ourselves and to figure out ways to live within our means. So,
right.
You go back to the conservation piece. When I first started, there was just a handful of people that did conservation, and that was in the early days. And that's exploded into, you mentioned, we're known throughout the country and throughout portions of the world. Our conservation ethic has traveled abroad several times. People want to know how we did it and how we continue to be on that cutting edge. And Karen Guz, Director of Conservation, she's done a phenomenal job leading that department over the years and making it what it is today. But even outside the conservation piece, we were forced to conserve what we had, whether it was on the customer end or, with our permit going forward. You didn't just get a piece of paper that said you had, so many thousand acre feet of water. Well, you got that, but then, in the fine text, well, you have this amount of water, but if you're in a drought and certain conditions are met, you're losing X% over time. So you truly didn't even have what you thought you had. So you had to maximize what you were giving in the wet times to get you through the dry time. So that led to the Aquifer Storage and Recovery Project, where we would take those excess water rights in those wet years and store them into the Carrizo Aquifer in southern Bexar County. So when the dry year comes and we lose a portion of our permit, we're able to mitigate that loss with that stored volume of water. So that was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And that project has turned into something that I never realized 20 years ago. And then another piece, again, going back to maximizing, what we had was the recycled water system. Taking that treated wastewater effluent and piping it back into the system and, taking golf courses offline, converting them from the fresh Edwards water to the recycled water, cooling towers, manufacturing, the river. That freed up more water to send to our customers. So, those three things, just regular old conservation, the Aquifer Storage and Recovery, and recycled water system, we have people that visit us from around the world every year wanting to know how we did those things, and they want to visit those and see, how do you make this work? I mean, it's an awesome story.
But it's not, like you say, it's really not intuitive if you've been, depending on a reservoir, for the, entire history of your organization, or had some wells that you could always rely on. It's one of the things that's fascinating to me is that, that litigation, which also spawned, state litigation, the bar shop case, which, resulted in the Texas Supreme Court, finally settling the question, you could regulate groundwater, which led to the creation of all these new groundwater districts. You've seen changes kind of, radiate out from San Antonio to the rest of the state. And you can kind of trace a lot of it back to that event, the litigation. But, you see how SAWS has become this, a leader in water conservation, and other things like the group that was suing to keep the Edwards-Aquifer Authority from coming into existence. One of the leaders of one of those plaintiffs in that case has been chairman of the Edwards-Aquifer Authority for quite a while. I don't know how many years now, but it's just it's just interesting to think about how all these things have happened, over the years with, kind of from those kind of beginnings where everybody was really mad at each other and they're suing each other.
Right.
And so that's one question I have for you is, as a water manager, how much of your time do you think you're engaged in maybe not dispute resolution as in mediation, but working with stakeholders or with another organization, water organization, to try to work out differences?
That's a good question. Back in the 90s, we kind of did things on our own. There wasn't a whole lot of, at least my impression, there wasn't a lot of interaction amongst the cities and sharing of ideas and trying to develop projects together for the common good. I never saw any of that. And I think coming forward, we are so much more regional now. Early on, you talk about all the conflicts early, and we had a lot of those too. But you keep working with people, and you show them that you're the same type person. You're both there to do the best for your ratepayers or your constituents. You're not out to harm the other, and there's always win-win situations. And I think we see a lot of that now. I know in the early days, on the Edwards side, there was a lot of angst, I guess, with the farmers and the city on the whole regulation of the Edwards. And over the years, those relationships have improved dramatically. It's essentially how those dynamics change. And then, we went to the east and developing our Gonzales well field. We had some of those same issues. There were a lot of concerns about the impacts to the Aquifer and so forth. And, we stayed engaged with the community, with the cities, the county, the Chamber of Commerce, and the groundwater districts and the utilities. And, nothing bad happened.
Mm-hmm.
We have great relationships with the cities out there, and we share information back and forth. And when we developed the project, we were committed to make sure that they would be made whole. So whatever impacts that were projected, we made sure that they were mitigated for that up front. And we've done all those. And we have a great relationship with those individuals. And then you go to, state or the regional planning process as part of the state's water plan. You're always working with the other cities, the utilities, the groundwater districts, the environmental folks, the general public. And it's that sharing of information, I think, that breaks down those barriers. When you walk into a room and you're listening to somebody speak on something that you're not real familiar with, you always have a hesitation as far as, do I believe them? Do I not believe them? Do I understand what they're talking about? Mm-hmm. But if you come in with an open mind and you hear them out and you have that communication back and forth, I think it changes people's approach. Right. And their understanding. And I think that's happened. I mean, it's, between Austin and San Antonio, we're one of the, San Antonio's the fastest growing city in the country. Austin's up in the top 10. The corridor's in the top 10. I mean, mm-hmm. There are a lot more people coming into this area, whether people want that or not, but it's happening. And, we all need to work together to ensure that as it's happening, that everybody's prepared for it. So, I love sitting down with other water leaders from the other utilities and cities and sharing information and trying to figure out, how things could be done better or what options are out there to benefit all of us. So I didn't see that, early on in my sales career, but it's definitely there now, and we're a much more regional entity for the better. I think, you hit on several things there. One is, we've now got the regional water planning process started in 97, so you get to know people that way, other stakeholders. And then we had the Recovery Implementation Program under the Endangered Species Act for the Edwards Aquifer. And, once you're sharing all that information, but you're also getting to know these people. And I think my observation is that that's also a big part of it. It's you may, when you don't really get to know someone, but you just see them when you're in a hearing room at the legislature and you're on opposite sides of a bill, or you're in a courthouse, or you're in front of the city council and it's adversarial, you tend to, over time, attribute motives to other folks that they may not have, I guess. Right. And you mentioned that, the Aquifer Recovery Implementation Program, that was, 7 years of development and lots of stakeholder meetings and a lot of varying interests. And, everybody came in with some preconceived notions about how things should be done and what they believed in. And it took a while, for those groups and us included to listen to each other, understand where the other was coming from, and come up with a solution that I think benefits everybody. Not everybody's happy with everything, but I think overall, I believe it worked out for the best. Right. And so it just proves that you can have decades of fighting over the Edwards Aquifer or anything, any other project. And ultimately, you can have a solution and have everybody on board for that solution. I mean, it just shows how people can work together if they choose to listen to each other. Right. And so now we are, I guess, what are we in, year 6 or 7 of the implementation of the Edwards Aquifer Habitat Conservation Program? I think start of 7. Let's see, 13 was... It was approved in March of 13. 6. So, something like that, and so just
how do you feel about how implementation's going, and what do you see as kind of the big challenges ahead for the HCP, as we called it?
It's funny when we first kicked it off and approved the incidental take permit and habitat conservation plan, I was pretty nervous, and not because I didn't think the plan would work, but it was the timing of when it was starting.
Right.
I mean, we started the thing 2 years into a drought.
Right.
And it wasn't just a regular drought. 2011 was the hottest, driest year in history for the state of Texas. So I was pretty nervous about that because, you're starting, there were some pretty big programs that had to be put together and completed in a short period of time, and that wasn't going to help it get completed. Mm-hmm. And so I was worried, but I think what happened is, we folks started implementing what they were supposed to implement, whether it was the ecosystem side or the flow protection measure side. We went on as we had planned, regardless of what the conditions were. Obviously we had to work around things based on, spring flows at the time. But I think the huge thing that came out of that was the information we got on the species during low flow conditions that we didn't have going into that 7-year period. So we actually got some real information,
right, with
real conditions, and so we were able to get those answers and adjust as we were moving forward. So, of course, I can say that now because it rained and everything went back to normal. But I was definitely nervous, but I think we benefited from going through it. It proved that everybody was committed, and we got some really good science out of that period of time. So I think that worked out well. Now, coming to where we are today, we're going through into that transition from the first phase to the second phase, and everything from my perspective seems to be going very well. I think the work that the spring communities have done, New Braunfels and San Marcos, with their ecosystem restoration improvements, there in those cities is phenomenal. I mean, most people, when they go and visit the springs and the rivers, they notice the beauty of it, but that's just a side benefit to it. It's creating that ecosystem for the species in order for them to thrive, that the folks don't really see or don't understand. On the flow protection side, I know from our perspective, the Aquifer Storage and Recovery Project is a huge piece of that flow protection during drought. And I think we've gone above and beyond what we thought we were going to be able to do during this short period of time. So I believe that the program is successful. I think going forward, I think only great things are going to happen. I think this, it's one of those things that we do here in Texas. It's not, it's not one entity that's building it. It's multiple entities that are involved to accomplish, a common good.
So it's interesting. In 2013, I was kind of telling the people that I work for that I thought we were actually lucky that we were going through that when we were going through it, because we were going to know really quickly whether this thing was going to work or not. I mean,
absolutely.
I mean, the relationships as well as the plan we had. And for us, being downstream, it was better to know right then than in, say, 2024 when we hit a repeat of the drought on record, and somehow it all came apart or something. So, so let me ask you about this now. You apparently are part of a secret that very few people know about. And don't get nervous. It is the water market, which is the Edwards Aquifer, and I told you, I think we had lunch a couple months ago, and I was listening to a panel of experts on water markets talk, some of which were from Texas, and not one of them mentioned the Edwards. And they were talking about, how markets might function and stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's really not meant to be a secret, I don't think, but people just don't know much about it. And so, I'd like to hear, what you think about the water market that was created by the legislature in '93, and whether you think it's done its job or not.
Well, I tell you what, those early years when we got our permit, and that permit wasn't going to meet our demand going forward, it was a little scary. But with how the ledge created the Edwards and how they determined it was going to be permitted, it created some incredible opportunities for us, for sure. They, on the ag side, they awarded 2 acre-feet per surface acre for every irrigated acre of land. Okay, so you had 100 acres of land that you irrigated over that historical period. You got 200 acre-feet of water. And 100 acre-foot of that water, you could sell, you could lease, you could do whatever you wanted with. But the other 100 acre-feet, it had to stay with the land. So, and the farmers, for the most part, they only needed that, what we call the base acre-foot, the acre-foot that stays with the land. So they now had a commodity. They had an asset that they could take advantage of. And so they had the supply, and here in San Antonio, we had the demand. We needed water rights. We were going gangbusters on the conservation. We were developing the ASR. We were working on our recycled water system. But we needed more physical supply to go into the system. So we went out and we started working with farmers and talking to them and developing a process and a program moving forward where we could lease water rights from entities, we could purchase water rights. Over the years, we've spent over $200 million purchasing water rights from the farming community to the west of us in Medina and Uvalde County, and also from industrial permit holders. It truly bought us time to develop those next level of supplies for the city. Without that, I'm not sure exactly how things would have worked, but it worked out well for us. And on top of the $200+ million on the purchase side, we spent over $70 million in leasing water rights. So, we have relationships with permit holders for over 20 years. We were there when their kids were young. Now the kids are grown up. The money, the investment we made into that community paid dividends on that side, and it paid dividends on our side, because now we have over $1 billion worth of Edwards water rights that we own. That can't be replaced easily.
Right.
We're at over 250,000 acre-feet of water that we own. So we gained a little over 100,000 acre-feet from our original permit. And that, today would be several $1 billion worth of projects
right.
to get. So it's this water market, and it's funny because I don't know. It's something we dealt with, and we really didn't. And there was nothing else out there that we could base it on. So we kind of developed it over the years on our own, and it worked out well. And we weren't the only ones. There were multiple neighboring communities that we worked with, and they leased water from us and bought some from us. So it worked out well for everybody. And it's funny because you have 572,000 acre feet of permits, and so there's a finite amount of water that's available. And so it's almost like it's like a stock market. I mean, you buy and sell based on the shares available. And those can go up or they can go down depending on supply and demand. But that's where I probably had the most fun over the years, leasing and purchasing water rights. I met a lot of tremendous people and built friendships. No, it's been great, and I'm shocked that the water market experts never mentioned the Edwards. It's funny because I don't really see another true water market in the state other than the Edwards. Right.
And so, I'm trying to do something about that right now. but it's always a mystery to me. It really is. And it's not maybe an example of or a model for what you would do in other aquifers in the state, but there are other aquifers in the United States that have some similar characteristics that could look at what was done by the Edwards Aquifer Authority and all the folks like Saws who had permits in the Edwards and benefit from that model.
Yeah, it's not a one size fits all by any means. I mean, it's for again, it's Edwards specific and how that developed, and it was luckily it was I guess for me it was an easy one to work within compared to others.
So do you have a good sense? I mean, I know this information's available, but I don't know if you looked at it recently. How ag use has changed and municipal use has changed over the period that the Edwards has been operating. Because if you look back historically, say before the litigation, that there were some years when 542,000 acre feet were pumped, and maybe not a half of it, but a large percentage of it was for irrigation for crops.
Right. And I don't know the specifics on the ag's usage over the years, but I do know that the lessors that we worked with over the years, I know that a lot of them were taking the proceeds from their leasing to us or sale of water to us, and they were taking out their flood irrigation systems. They're putting in center pivots to be more efficient, and then over the years those pivot systems became even more efficient. So they were always taking that extra income and investing it into their farming operations and making the farming operations even better and more efficient. So I think I'd have to look at the numbers, but I'm pretty confident that the ag consumption over the last 20 years has changed dramatically for the better. I mean, even for saws, our usage year in, year out really doesn't change very much. I mean, it's flat to going negative because of our conservation efforts, because of the other supplies that we brought online. And it's going to continue dropping over the years as we bring on new supplies. So I think it's benefited the ag community tremendously, and it's benefited us. I think, I could get this totally wrong, but I think overall Edwards usage over the last several years is around the 400,000 acre foot ballpark, somewhere around there, maybe a little higher.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, we're not even coming close to the 572 anymore. And those were even during some pretty dry years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that's a true testament to the ag community and to the municipal side is, we have a precious resource and we need to maximize that, not waste it.
Yet my impression is that about the same amount of acreage is being farmed out west of San Antonio. I may be wrong about that, but it looked like it hadn't resulted in a big contraction of the area that's being farmed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me ask you this. So you alluded to this a second ago. You've got new projects coming online. I'm gonna ask you about Vista Ridge here in a second. But as you pointed out, when those come online, you really have to use those to their max instead of maybe using the Edwards because they're expensive, and that's a way to keep them from being more expensive. I guess it's not a very good way of saying it, but I think that's what you're trying to convey. Am I right?
Yes. So when you bring on a new water source, you have, and it's not like with the Edwards where you already have all the infrastructure in place. You're just producing more water out of it. These new projects, they come with a lot of capital costs, and so there is a more expensive minimum that you're paying on an annual basis, and the actual cost to produce the water and to treat the water is just a little more than the cost of the bond or the debt. So you're paying for it whether you use it or not. So we try to maximize those other sources to maximize that investment. So as we are base loading our demand off those new supplies, every new one that comes on, that's less Edwards that we're producing. So, which is why we've been able to stay flat or slightly decline from our Edwards production over the last several years, is because we have new projects that are online, and we rely on those as the baseline, and then we supplement with the Edwards. Now, keep in mind, we still produce, close to 200,000 acre feet of Edwards, which is our primary source. But we only use that to fill the gaps that the other supplies don't cover. And you mentioned Vista Ridge. When Vista Ridge comes online in April of 2020, so just a little over a year from now, that project is going to bring online 45 million gallons a day of water. And so the day that project starts delivering, that's 45 million gallons per day of Edwards water that won't be produced. So, we have all the model runs, with the Edwards and what the Edwards, how it operates and what impacts it have because of this or that. I cannot wait to see how the Edwards system will benefit from that additional 45 million gallons being taken offline on a daily basis.
Right. I would love to see the hydrograph of the springs and J17, the index well, the day, from the day before to Vista Ridge comes online to that day, and you can see the jump and all that.
Right. And you should. You should see that reduction in the pressure within the system. We should see that benefit.
And that'll benefit Kamal and San Marcos Springs and water all the way downstream into San Antonio Bay.
The entire region will benefit from that.
So you gave us a little bit of an update on Vista Ridge that's going to be online in April of 2020. Why don't you just give me a quick kind of summary of the project because some people might not be familiar with it. Okay, we're gone.
Okay. All right, so the Vista Ridge project, it's a public-private partnership that SAWS has entered into now with Garney Construction. So they are a private company that is building the entire project from the well field to the delivery point. And they will actually own the project for 30 years, own and operate it, and sell the water to SAWS. And then at the end of that 30-year project or time period, ownership of the entire project reverts over to SAWS, and then we will operate and own it, beyond that. But the project is based on the Simsboro and Carrizo formations of the Carrizo-Wilcox Aquifer. They'll be producing water out of Burleson County, and so they'll produce 45 million gallons a day out of Burleson, send it to San Antonio, and again, this project we'll start drinking the water April of 2020. So we're pretty excited about this project. I mean, this is the largest project SAWS has ever committed to. So this one is a definite game changer moving forward. This solidifies our long-term supplies. This gets us into the 2040s before we have to or need to start looking at developing that next source, whether it's the expansion of our brackish project or the expansion of our current Carrizo Aquifer project in Southern Bexar County. So this is a big deal. I mean, when this comes online, it's going to replace 45 million gallons per day of Edwards water. So, we'll go from, on an annual basis, let's say 200,000 acre feet a year, to looking at 150,000 acre feet. I mean, this is going to have a huge benefit to the Edwards Aquifer, the region, the springs. This is something that, Todd, it's not factored into the Habitat Conservation Plan. Mm-hmm. So, we developed all those programs to ensure flow in the springs, and then this is just going to add to it. So this is going to be a big double bang for the buck.
Well, that's something that I think people aren't aware of downstream. And it's, I guess Vista Ridge is other than your Edwards supply, would that be your second largest supply once it comes online?
Yes. So Edwards, Vista Ridge, and then, we have the capacity at ASR, but again, those are term productions. We store most years, so we only produce during dry years. So on a year-to-year basis, Vista Ridge would be the second largest project we have in our portfolio. And
I guess you do have a little surface water because you have some water out of Canyon. Mm-hmm. So you've got almost every type of water supply that you can have, don't you? I mean, it almost seems like, except for seawater desal. That's the only thing.
Yeah, we don't have ocean water, but let's see, we have. I mean, we pull out water out of the Edwards. We have supplies in the Trinity Aquifer. We have supplies in the Carrizo, the Lower Wilcox. We'll have supplies coming out of the Simsboro, with Vista Ridge. And then you have Canyon Lake, and we also have supply coming out of Lake Dunlap, obviously, which is sourced out of Canyon Lake, but two different locations along the Guadalupe. So yeah, we're scattered all over. Well, also we do have Medina Lake is a source for us. We're not currently utilizing Medina Lake, but that is an option as well as we move forward.
When it has water in it.
When it has water.
Well, that's that's a story in itself. Well, Medina Lake's a story in itself, but I mean how diverse your supplies are now compared to what they were 20 or when you started, right? When you started.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we went from one source to 8 sources from 15 different projects. And it's funny because we have Carrizo sourced in Bexar County. We have Carrizo and Gonzales from our project. And we also have Carrizo Water from Church Seguin Local Government Corporation, who we have a partnership with to treat our water and deliver that water to us. And we also get Carrizo water from Canyon Regional Water Authority. So, it's not just, okay, it's the Carrizo from this one area, but we have Carrizo from multiple areas, along with the Trinity and even the surface water, the Guadalupe from Canyon Lake and Dunlap. So, we're not just drawing out of one specific location. We're kind of spread out, and as we started developing our supplies over the years, we focused on what's in our backyard first. We didn't jump out to the long distances at first. I mean, we focused on what we had available in San Antonio, maximized that, and then we started looking beyond our boundaries.
Which is a good way to do it, because I'm sure, anytime you try to go outside of your boundaries, you get the inevitable question, well, why don't you develop what you got in your backyard first?
Right. And other, like LA, they took the opposite approach, 100 years ago, and developed that big source across the state. And only now are they looking at what they have available to them in their geographic area. So yeah, we did things quite a bit differently than others.
And they're actually, and it was, I'm trying to remember, is it Owens Lake? Is that what it's?
Owens Valley.
Yeah, and they're, I guess, trying to restore some of that. I guess maybe as they develop supplies closer.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think. The next big thing for you, you got the second phase of the Habitat Conservation Plan that's got to be implemented, and I guess we're starting another round of the water planning process. Or you're already in it, I guess.
We are, so the regional planning process, we are 2 years out, less than 2 years out from a plan. So it seems like these things turn rather quickly. Again, those are long processes. They're 5-year intervals as well. But it's good. You have all the major players in the region from the utility side, environmental side, working, for that common good and making sure that, the cities have, those utilities and cities have those supplies identified to meet their needs. And, not everybody does the type of planning that we do. That's just kind of a secondary plan for us because we develop our own and spend a lot of time doing it. But, for others, that's where they get all their information from. They rely on the state and that regional planning process to get them where they need to be and to educate them on their population and demands and so forth. So it's good, and we get to work with those groups and share what we've done and help where we can.
And you're doing the same with hosting folks from around the world to see all that you've accomplished, and that's a great thing, and I'm sure that SAW's ratepayers should be pleased that y'all become that kind of a model, and that people are interested in not only coming and seeing the Riverwalk, but then taking a tour of your facilities down south of the city.
Oh, absolutely. It's over the last year. We've met. I know I've personally met with individuals from Denmark, South Africa, Argentina, Romania. I think we had some folks from Mongolia. They literally come from all over the world, and it's fun to share our successes and our failures with them, to help help them with their processes back home. But we do a lot here in the States as well. I mean, we host a lot of folks from across the country. I was in Oklahoma back in November at the Oklahoma Governor's Water Conference, and sharing our story with them. And they're trying to put together regulations for ASRs and recycled water systems and so forth. So we're 10, 15 years into some of these projects, and others are just starting to look into that technology to maximize what they have. So it's fun to sit down and talk with them, and every place is different, so you can't truly copy what we've done, but you can take a majority of our experiences and make them fit your situation. So it's good. It's a good way to share information.
Well, my final question to you is, do you ever get invited to go see them where, in Denmark and all these other places? You ever get that part of it, or?
Unfortunately, I haven't. I would love to, but I have not.
Well, I imagine, people, the ratepayers might be sensitive about that kind of thing, so. Well, Darren.
I'm happy to share what we've done.
Yes, yeah. Well, Darren, thank you so much for taking an hour out of your time today to talk about water with me.
Oh, absolutely. It's been fun.
And I apologize about the glitch in minute 47, which I still don't know what happened, but the conversation that no one will ever hear was really good, and I think this substitute conversation that we had was good as well. So, you're right. But Darren Thompson, the San Antonio Water System Director of Water Resources, has been my guest today on Talk+Water, and we'll be back in a week with another episode, entry, something, of Talk+Water. Thank you.